everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. It is Monday night. We are back in action. The trio is back again. I am your host, as always, Tim Wichin here in Chicago. And fall is here, kids. It's getting freaking cool out there, which I don't mind it as much, but it's that time of year where I now start complaining about the cold. So we have kind of like a little bit switched over here. But Gally is with us, as always. Gally, what's happening?
Well, it's good to know that you're going to complain about the cold as much as you complain about the rain, or you complain about the snow, or you complain about the warm.
I don't discriminate with weather, baby. I complain either freaking way. Oh, man, everybody's here. Serzi, Brian, Sideline, Bickler. How was the weather in your neck of the woods?
Shut up, dog. Just happy it's not a swamp down here. It's feeling cooler. Like I was telling Gally, it's cool on the coast. Western North Carolina is still digging themselves out from historic flooding, and Florida is bracing for impact, and that's going to be a gross one. My dad evacuated this morning, so.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I was going to answer that because, like, I don't know a lot of people in
the town. Dude, it's going to be a bad one. Like, I told Gally, like, he didn't really evacuate like I wanted him to. He went to a storm house, which is like an hour and a half south of his place that relatives have with, like, backup generators, and it's on stilts, but this thing is a Category 5, and I think, honestly, the best case scenario for Florida is that it actually stays a 5 and blazes through basically from, west to east, because if this thing hits a 3 or a 4, it could slow down and stall, and if that happens, it is going to be historic devastation for Florida. So fingers crossed that everyone makes it out okay. Either way, regardless, no matter what happens with this, when it hits landfall, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I saw it earlier today, and like I say, like I don't know a lot of people in Tampa area, just from like like Liverpool people and stuff like that. But I did think of it that I was like, I think he's in Florida in that area. And then so he says 100 degrees out there in Cal, which is odd for them to have that kind of like an obnoxious heat. So yes, weather is going all over the place, and yeah, like Serzi, I mean, you can only wish the best. Can't beat Mother Nature. You can only prepare for it, I think, is what it is. You know what you can beat? No, yeah. You can beat Crystal Palace. You can beat Crystal Palace away 1-0. First, take a 4-point lead, and then everybody kind of catches up. But go into this the newest and better international break before we go on to the next one. Bickler, everybody kind of struggled this week, in terms of like, the people at the top. Is that an effect of Europe? Is that an effect of the upcoming international break, or what is it?
I mean, I feel like it kind of has to be. Like, we're talking about like, well, we just talked about how collectively not great the experience was for us this weekend. It was like, yeah, it's almost like these guys played 3 games in like in 4 days. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it was 8 days, right? But I mean, when you talk about all the travel involved and all that stuff, when you have Champions League in the middle, like, I just felt like there was a lot of tired legs out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, right? It just felt like it was a little... I thought the rotation was good. So we'll talk about the roster and, like how we started and stuff like that. And it did kind of work out, maybe because we're looking at the result now. It's like it's gone in the past, Gally. But at the same time, like we didn't guess Costas. I mean, you and I, especially because Gomez came in, we were like, hey, I guess we're not going to see Costas anymore. You see Costas out there. You see Gakpo out there. And it felt like Slot was able to press just the right buttons to be able to rotate and still keep the gameplay the way we like it.
Yeah, so I have a question for you guys, because I'd originally seen the lineup with Robertson in it.
Yes, same.
Then when I got to the house that I was going to watch, and because it was 45 minutes away, I kind of thought like, oh, maybe there was an injury in the buildup, or like something happened pre-match that allowed that. Did they announce anything about there being a change, or was it just the leaked lineup had Robertson in it, and then the true lineup came out with Tsimikas? Because I thought Robertson was starting, and then they made a late change to go to Tsimikas. But that
I did not give anything. I know what you mean, though, because when I woke up and looked at like the lineup, and I first saw Robertson, then I go into Discord and I see the post with the picture and stuff, and I was like, fuck, this is not I mean, that woke me up at 6:25 in the morning. I was like, Constance at left back. So I mean, but apart from that, no, I don't think I didn't hear of an issue where
okay. I wasn't sure I wasn't sure I wanted to ask because to me it was like it was two of the most surprising things. One, you go to Simicast instead of Gomez or someone else, and then Robertson comes into the match, and I'm like, well, if he couldn't go, why did he appear? Like that just didn't make any sense to me. So I like what Slot did, and thank you for clarifying that. I like what Slot did. I thought he did a right job with the rotation. I was happy to see Jones in there. I was really happy to see Gakpo get a start. I really was. I thought that he deserved it, and I think it would have been a mistake to not start him in this match. I still, you know, what's happening with Gravenberch and McAllister? At some point, they're going to need rest, or we're going to get more of these 45-minute injuries getting picked up. And I know it was just I felt something.
Yeah.
He felt something, had to come out at halftime, and then got on a plane and flew to Miami to meet up with the Argentinians. So, like, maybe he should have just been rotated and not feel anything for that.
Maybe the doctor said, you need some sun and heat. Go to Miami. It will make it all better, kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, that was scary. Obviously, we'll talk about Ellison as well, because that was even scarier. Sounds like, I don't know if like Slot is just being optimistic, but doesn't sound like it's that bad. But what did you think of the rotation, Bickler? Just right about. I mean, we did expect a bit more personally, like when we talked about it, but it seemed to work out just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I expected less. I originally had expected like a stronger 11 on this side, but like I think when you saw the side that came out for the Champions League, we kind of knew that this was going to be what it was. So I mean, I guess bright lights for me. I was like excited to see Jones in the starting 11. I was excited about that. I, like everybody else, was a little bit nervous about Tsimikas being out there. But this had a lot to like. I mean, Gakpo starting on the left is something that a lot of us wanted to see. So I think there were some good things here across the board. Agree with Gally. At some point, you can't just continue to run McAllister and Gravenberch out there, though.
Well, we got a glimpse of that, right? Jones stepping back there a little bit and stuff. But before we put Jones back there and take a look at that, what did you think of Jones and Szoboszlai's spots?
Honestly, I thought Jones was better in the second half when he wasn't in that spot. I thought when he had to drop deeper, I thought he played better personally.
I think it feels like he takes the space in front of him a lot better than the tight spaces. But what did you think, Gally? Because I mean, when we talked about it in the past, and we talked about Szoboszlai, and obviously, until Harvey gets back, on paper, Jones seems to be the natural replacement unless you're sliding Gakpo, or basically unless you're sliding somebody. So what did you think of it compared to what you get from, obviously, the Szoboszlai effect?
I thought Jones was decent in the first half. I always feel like Curtis Jones, when he doesn't get a run of games for a long time, like you have to take the first 8 to 15 minutes he's on the pitch almost like a grain of salt. Because he tries to make up for all the time he's been sitting on the bench thinking about all the things.
Moves.
Let me show you 3 step overs.
It's just 11 minutes of step overs.
And what drove me nuts was then he had the moment to create the Everton moment, and he like paused. Like he had that instance in the first half where he could cut it in on his right foot. And I was like, oh, I know what's coming next from Jones. And then he like almost got nervous, like he wasn't ready for it, and he didn't take it, and he, kicked it to the corner flag. I did feel like he was trying to make a little bit too much happen in the first half, and I felt like in the second half, when he went a little deeper, it was almost like he allowed the match to come to him, and in turn, he could just kind of play a role in the midfield. But I don't think he was terrible in that 10 role. What it made me realize is how much this side could really use a healthy Harvey Elliott in it.
Yes, because it does feel like, and we haven't seen a whole lot of it, to be fair. We're just kind of like assuming, and we're basing it on the past of what Harvey has done. But it seems like, Bickler, that it is kind of like it fits him perfectly in terms of like what we want in that spot now, because he can take care of the spaces. He, I feel like, has a better chemistry with the right wing, with like Trent and Mo and stuff like that as well. And he can give you the defensive work Which, mind you, Jones did as well. But if it's Jones over Harvey, is that a no-brainer to pick Harvey?
I mean, I'm picking Harvey there. I think he's more of a natural fit. And I got to tell you, one of these guys has got to be the answer because I can't survive a summer with the Coutinho transfer rumor. Like, so it's got to be one of these guys because none of us want to hear that shit again this summer. And I feel like we're treading into dangerous territory where that's a real possibility.
It can happen any minute. I'm sure he's available somewhere. Is he back in Brazil?
I think so. Yeah,
or is he in Saudi Arabia?
He went to Qatar.
Where in the world is Coutinho?
He went to Qatar last year, not Saudi Arabia. On
even Saudi Arabia didn't want him. They're like, why don't you try Qatar? They might need you.
I'm pretty sure. I feel like Brazil.
He's in Brazil on loan.
Yeah, because last I thought he was going back to Brazil.
Vasco da Gama.
Yes, where it's all started or something like that. Something romantic, if you will.
It all started with him. It all started with him having way too much hair and way too big of an ego because the guy freaking shot himself out of 4 different clubs before he got to Liverpool. Then he got to Liverpool. It all worked, and he still shot himself out of that club. There's a guy I think will retire and look back at his playing days and probably say to himself, what was I ever thinking?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be like, man,
he's got to retire the next. He's 32 and he's back where he started his career, which is usually a sign that you're a year or two out.
I mean, except for Casemiro, who basically is back where he started his career, which is in like lead boots, walking around a pitch aimlessly with a pie face and about 17 stones extra on the.
I feel like some of those guys have a really toxic relationship at home, so they just stay like unretired, like they just play until people make them retire.
That's got to be why Modric is. Modric must just hate his wife. He's like, I'm never going to actually spend a weekend with you ever. So I'm just going to play till I'm 150. And when I'm 150,
you just do the Tom Brady and play till you divorce.
Well, that worked too. Worked well for him.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, Casemiro's living the life, man. I mean, he's basically retired for the most part. But I mean, hey, we wish we could be getting the wages he's getting when we retire, right? So he's retired, semi-retired, but it's like coming to Major League Soccer or something like that. Ultimately, he's making a ton of money, hanging out. He's won everything under the sun. So when anybody looks back, he's one of those guys. Like, we talk about Coutinho, for example. When he looks back at the career and stuff. When you look back at Casemiro's career, nobody's going to remember his last year or whatever at United. It's just going to be the Real Madrid's Casemiro. So it's going to be like Gerrard. Like, I know I have tried to erase the LA Galaxy portion of it. So nobody's going to look at that. Everybody's going to look at like where he made the name. But let's get back to our boys. A couple of comments I want to get to. But before that, let's start with Alisson's injury right there. We were talking about it with the Polish Prince this morning, but are we... It seemed like the injury did not happen when he kicked the ball, but it was already something that happened, probably because he likes doing that outside of the foot thing, which I never understand because, like, that's not going to be that accurate. I mean, you're giving it the curve, but I mean, Jesus, you're just like booting it. So you're not going to get like accuracy in there. And all his injuries seem to come from this, Bickler, is kicking the ball out. Is this something that we have to adjust? Because, one thing good to be with your feet and actually play the long ball or play in the back during the buildup. But he's hurting himself as he's like pretty much booting it away, not even like, passing it long.
It is a tough conundrum when you think about, like, would you rather have Alisson hurt kicking it out of the back or watch Alisson consistently try to play it out of the back? And I don't know what the right answer is there because, like, we complain about his decision-making coming out of the back and then, like, he goes and boots it and does that. I think we need to make sure that he's doing his stretching before and after games because I don't know if he's, like, skipping it and going straight to the locker room or something, or his hamstrings are just made of old rubber bands at this point. But it's ridiculous the amount of, like, soft tissue injuries that he's gotten over the last 4 or 5 years. And for those who, Gally mentions in the Discord channel all the time, for those who were not excited about a goalkeeper signing this summer, you're now seeing why we have it.
Yes, I think so, right? I hope to God at least, but God knows with some people you can never be sure. And Shelton says, it was from a pointless back pass, and in some ways, what I was thinking of after Jaros came in, that maybe we do play. I know Klopp has actually mentioned this in the past when Alisson had like make a mistake or something like that. That not every ball has to be played back. Are we almost like using it too much? Because you notice when Jaros came into the game, there was a point where Van Dijk had the ball on the left, and the natural flow of play would be he would probably just turn around and give it to Alisson. He did not. Like he did not put the kid under that pressure, and he kind of like turned the other way and gave it to Konate and stuff like that. So maybe should we be doing more of that? Perhaps Galley, where we don't. It's almost like we overuse him because he can play with his feet.
I think we overuse them the way everyone in world football overuses their keeper nowadays, because the tactical nous is to kick the ball back and play out from your keeper and start the build up deep, right? There were a couple times late where I was like, hey, can we not kick the ball back to the keeper? Like once in stoppage time, they kicked the ball back and he had. Now, I will say this about the Arrows kid. I thought the kid acquitted himself really well. To be a third keeper, get brought on in a 1-0 game, and actually hold on to that ball that Eze shoots, even though it was right at him, it's still a good catch. And if he drops it, it bounces out and there's a player coming down at him. And I thought the one that was even more impressive was the one where he was way off his line and he cleared the ball and he had to be coming out and get the ball. Like it was a confidence play. And you can see a backup keeper every once in a while get nervous there and like take the one step forward and then they're done. And there was that one moment where I was like, wow, that's good on him. Like they'll watch that in the film and I'm sure the goalkeeper coach will be like,
I know Van Dijk was like, that's the one that Van Dijk was congratulating him for, because
he was fired up.
Did not even expect him to. I mean, you normally expect your goalie to come out. If it's Ali, he probably doesn't doubt it. If it's Keller, you can tell Van Dijk is like, hope to God he's there. And he was there where he's supposed to be. So, yeah, I know exactly. And then I know Trent set him up a couple of times with others. He's like, let's see if I can get you injured as well. Kind of
good. I thought the one time Trent kicked the ball back to him, I thought it was he was just hanging him out to dry. I thought he was going to just take the attacking player out and give up like a red card and be like, now we're literally going to Joe Gomez in goal. We're going to see that Gomez or Endo can do everything in this side because they're about to enter the net. Every other team in the league put 3 goalkeepers out there, and for some reason we left 2 empty bench spots. But I thought that the keeper did well. I think the thing with Alisson that just drives me nuts is that it is that outside the foot ball, and he started feeling his legs and stretching as soon as he did that. The injury is like 10 minutes after that clearance. And 40 games in 6 years. 40 missed first team games in 6 seasons. And I got shit for saying it was a good idea to buy a keeper. And people want to give this guy an extension and extend his contract at this age. Like, he's the best goalkeeper in the world. Here's the thing. Iker Casillas could still be the best goalkeeper in the world right now, physically. But he can't play 60 games or 40 games a year or 30 games a year. And I don't think you can invest that kind of money. So everybody else, I thought one more year, I think we're seeing the end. I actually think the kid will be here next year competing to be the number 1 goalkeeper, because I don't think it's prudent for the club to go forward expecting him to play 30 to 40 games a year. And I don't think you pay a backup to play.
But you think like I feel like if Mamardashvili comes in, he'll be coming to take over. Like he's not going to.
That's
be
my
like,
point. He comes in and goes number
Ali
1.
would be going because you said when you said competing. I don't know if you meant like they're both there competing or something.
Originally, I thought he would maybe be loaned out one more season, but maybe one here in England. Let Ali play out the contract. Sell Ali the last season. I actually think now. I think the goal is to get this kid in here, get him comfortable, get him playing, and he starts next season. I mean, I don't think there's any 2 ways around that. And I just Kelleher will do a good job for a few more months, but I just think like when we move forward, I think it's probably Mamashvili and this Yaros kid as his deputy. moving forward.
Probably, because Silence with Bushel says, "What about Kelly?" I think, I mean, we've decided by spending that money. I think we've basically made the statement that we love Kelleher as a backup, but we don't really see him as like a long-term number one kind of a thing. Which is, I mean, I'm glad they kept him and they did not sell him and get tempted to move him just for the money and stuff like that. And the problem with probably Ali is like those 40 games. It's not like he had one big injury and we missed him for a lot. It's like a bunch of like batches of games that he's missed because it's always like the same reason. Is it kind of like, do you think it's like a long-term thing? Like, would you not give him a contract as well, Paul? Let's take Mamardashvili out of the equation. Would you give him a contract if you didn't have this guy waiting in the ranks? Let me ask you that first, based on the injuries that Gali was referring to.
I mean, I would, because I don't think, with Kelleher, he wants to push for an Ireland spot. And so he has to be playing. Yeah. So, like, you got to look at the backup situation. So you either have to have an academy prospect who's fine as a backup, or you have to have one of these retread 39 to 40-year-old keepers sitting out there who's good to spot start, right? And I don't think either one of those puts you in a better position. So, like, I think that's why the club went and got, somebody like this to do this. I mean, he's going to be like, what? He's 32. Like, I think, his injury history or his ability to pick up these injuries certainly isn't going to lessen, right? Like, So I think you almost have to consider it. I mean, while he's still got 30 to 40 million left in him, I think you could probably get that for him. Like, I think it just makes sense. And I know it's crazy because we're talking about, arguably one of the greatest keepers at Liverpool. And when you consider the run that he's made with this team, I get that. I do think that this system is good enough where you don't have to have the best goalkeeper in the world to not concede goals.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, heck, he was having one hell of a game, too, by the way, until then. Like, he made some pretty big saves before he got injured. And, you could argue he's kept us. I mean, to me, he's like world's number one. We might be all biased and stuff a little bit, but he's definitely, I think, for everybody, he's in top three. Yes. I mean, we might be biased and say he's one. And then, the Real Madrid might say, no, Courtois is one and stuff, which, everybody can make a good argument for themselves. They can say Ederson or whatever, but I think everyone will agree that he's in the top three. I mean, when we did the move and signed the goalie, Gali, I was more under the impression that it was kind of an insurance policy that if Saudi Arabia came in similar to what they did with Ederson, we were like, sure, fine. What are you going to give? 80? That's fine, because we got this kid over here who's La Liga's goalkeeper of the year and stuff like that. Now, I mean, does this really change the narrative that much? Yet another injury kind of thing? Because I am afraid that this is not something that he can just take out of his game and like, I'll stop hitting with the outside of my foot kind of a deal, because it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're older and you get hurt, the odds are it's going to continue. Like, these things don't usually dissipate.
We got a 24-hour pod marathon that backs that up.
Yeah, exactly. I got sciatica from sitting in a goddamn chair, and I'm still feeling the fucking pain on October 7th. Okay?
To be fair, let's hope Ellison is in better shape.
I think what it comes down to is they bought a player that they believed was a future, like, cornerstone for this club. Like, that's what I think is being overlooked here. People act like they took a flyer on a goalkeeper. They bought the best goalkeeper at the Euros the summer after he was in the Euros with the intention of him starting someday for the club. I have all these people. I love when I see the comments like, oh, they're going to give Ali an extension. I mean, even Brian Shelton's talking about giving him a 1-year extension, having a 3-year deal. Like, we're going to tell this kid he's got to sit for 3 more years? He's got to go out on loan for 3 years? They bought this player to be the new number one at the club, not be a backup, not be a deputy to someone. Now, is he the number one next year? I'm not sure. But every year that continued injuries and every year Allison gets older and you have no resale value. So for the next 3 months, I'm going to hear everyone whine about this player getting to the last year of his deal and us potentially losing Virgil and Mo and Trent. But now they want to just keep running Allison out there every week.
Yeah, I mean that's just
I don't understand this
we
stuff.
never
Like,
want the
you can't have it.
replacements, but we want a backup plan because we just want people in glass cabinets. So we can
Exactly.
just
It
break
just
the
doesn't
glass
work.
and pop out the new guy out. But
It just doesn't
I guess
work.
the only concern I have and the only question that pops in, and like we were talking about this with the Prince this morning as well, but I mean, I have not seen a lot of because I don't watch a lot of La Liga. And when I do, I don't watch it. And when I do, it's not his team. But I mean, we saw him obviously in the Euros, and he was in Turkey's group. So I did watch, a full game, and I pretty much watched them in like every game. The only like the negative when you look at the scouting is him playing with his feet, right? So isn't it like kind of like contradictory, Bickler, to sign a goalie who's like I say, probably the best available goalie. I'm not like he was a free agent, but he was like an available one that they could grab. Isn't it kind of odd that we would go after a keeper that has that as his weakness, whereas it feels pretty crucial to what we do?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a plan. I mean, who knows? Maybe Pep Lenders is going to get fired. We're going to bring him back and have him work with keepers. I don't know. I think it is weird, especially because Keller, is supposedly was a striker, is no better with his feet, in my opinion. So I think I think this is one of those things where like it's just a development thing. Like, but I don't know. Like when you're built like Donnarumma, right, and you're that big, I mean that probably is going to be a weak part of your game that doesn't get worked on a whole lot. So I'm confident that can be developed. And if it can't be developed, obviously there's got to be a plan B in terms of how we distribute the ball across the back.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, not that Ali is old, but not that he's young. I mean, 32 is not ridiculously old for a goalie, but it's not young for a goalie either. So he's right at that phase. Like I say, I always saw it as more like an insurance policy. And obviously, like we get to monitor his form too. I guess Valencia is sitting at 18, which, that doesn't really matter. Poor Pope was like, jumping around from side to side over there, trying to keep, what was that, Burnley alive. So if anything, he's getting a lot more practice as a goalie at the bottom of the table than the top of the table. So I don't have a problem with that. It's not, it's a team, not the goalie. It will be interesting to see like which way we head that one. And, if Ali stays healthy the rest of the year when he comes back, that's another thing. I don't know, like I say, if Slot is being like optimistic, he did say like 1 to 2 weeks and stuff like that. But so he might have just like kind of like pulled it, not tear it and stuff like that. Because the problem with hammies is if you come in early, you're gone again. And it's like 4 weeks a pop usually, especially if you come back early. But let's get to the next one because I did want to ask you guys about this. I thought Endo played better in pivots, says Brian. We lost the momentum when Jones dropped back. I mean, I've been saying it and getting a lot of shit for this over the last few months over here that I feel like this is basically the role for Endo at the moment is come in at games like this, Galley, help clean up, protect the back, not as be as concerned about his interplay and building play and creating chances and stuff like that, but be positive there, take a yellow for the team. Basically, a Far East version of Milner.
I will say when I was at the party I was at, they brought Endo on, and I actually said out loud, I'll make a 10-1 bet right now with anyone in the room. He gets a yellow before the end of the game. And I won't lie, I was so pissed when the ref did not give him the blatant yellow when he punched that ball at the corner flag on purpose. He pushed the ball out of bounds with his hand. And I'm like, there's my yellow. Where's my guaranteed yellow? And he didn't give him the fucking yellow. I thought he did a nice job. I think that is his role. I know Paul feels like he should play some more minutes. I think I'm right in between the two of you. Paul still thinks there's a role for him to start in certain matches and put in a performance. I see that he can do a little bit more of a job than I think you see through. And I think like I'm like the neutral one here. What I will say is Slot, and we had a graphic and we have a post coming out tomorrow, I think, about it, or Wednesday. There was a quote in the post-match where he talks about Endo specifically and what he brings to the side, his professionalism, and how hard he works, and how you know what you're getting from him. And it doesn't matter if he gets 5 minutes on the pitch or 90. He gives you full effort for every minute. it felt a lot like a manager saying all the right things about a guy who isn't going to hear a lot of positive things said about him ever again. Like it felt
And you
like
just described Milner. It could have been somebody talking about Milner, basically, right? I mean, like in terms of the correct.
You're a part of this. You're with us. You're a big part of this, but you're not going to be a big part of this. That's what it felt like. Like I think Endo gets himself a jersey every match until the end of the year, and I think he gets about 5 or 6 more appearances out of it.
So, Bickler, the word on the street is you don't agree with. So, where do you like?
No, he doesn't.
If you're starting him, right? In what kind of a game? I mean, like Brian Shelton says, cup. I mean, like a League Cup and stuff, full rotation. I get that. A rubber game in Champions League, I get that. But let's say in the Premier League, let me ask you, what kind of a game you're like? You know what? This is a good game for Endo to start.
I'm playing him in bigger midfields that I don't want McAllister that far back on. So I'm talking about the West Hams of the world. To some degree, depending on the lineups, some of the Everton matches, but just the bigger teams in the league, in terms of the teams that are just going to bang you to death, I'm not starting them against. Like, I even think to some degree, he gets you what you need versus a side like Forest, who sits back and tries to counter the shit out of you. I think like he makes sense in those type of matches. I'm not starting him against finesse teams. I'm not starting him against, like a team like Villa, who's a little bit bigger in the mids. I'm not starting him against them because so much of what they do is predicated on pace. But anything that is going to be a slugfest in the center of the park, I'm 100% putting him in there for. And I think he still does a job. And I think at at the end of the year, he's turning 32. I don't think I'm being unreasonable in saying he can get a spot start here and there. I'm not saying he's a regular starter. I don't think, anybody wants that from him. But I think he can. I do think that he can carry the load as a rotational piece.
Yeah, I mean, see, like the only issue I have, like let's say, like a game, like against Forest, like a team that sits back. I just don't know if he gets enough creativity from him in that spot to take, like the build-ups we do through the middle with the quick balls and stuff like that, like the quick passing where we create space so that we can have. Like the way Gravenberg can turn with the ball, the way that Maka can turn with the ball, once we create that situation, I just can't see Endo doing that. And we saw that in the League Cup where he turns, but it takes a while compared to, the way Gravenberg can turn with the ball, which has been amazing, by the way. But the way Maka can turn with the ball and create themselves space to make the pass and stuff. I guess that's my biggest concern, but I do agree. I think he's going to be a valuable piece of the squad. He's going to be always on the bench because you're going to be able to put him in games like this, and you're going to be putting him in games where you need to rest people. And then he will, I think, get starts when we have to rotate either to the injury or like game traffic and stuff like that. So there is that. So I mean that really, like, that's why I like in the Premier League, I don't think I'm putting him in a starting spot unless we have to. But Costa, speaking of people that we normally would not put in a starting spot in the Premier League, he almost had, and I think like Brian Shelton actually made him player of the game, player of the match or something like that in the post-match, if I remember right. What did you think of his performance? And is that because, and I asked him, Brian, that when he said that too, that is it like more of like a sliding scale? Because when we saw his name, we were like, oh shit. So when he played pretty decent, we're like, he is the man, kind of like a revelation kind of a deal. What did you make of his performance?
I thought he was good. I mean, I think we grade on a curve. When we watch players and we constantly criticize them, we see them have a good 70, 80-minute performance, and we're like, yeah, that guy showed me up. I thought he was absolute shite, and he was a 4.5 today. Like, I think we overextended. I also think that Gakpo, in my opinion, Gakpo was the best player on the pitch, even though he didn't score the goals. He created one, right? He had an assist, I think, he had the assist on the goal. I thought he was good and bright. I thought that the interchange between him and Costas looked really good. And I thought that's what I liked about Costas was he was going forward and he was linking up well with Gakpo. He had a couple good overlapping runs. He had a couple good balls through. If Tsimikas is playing, though, and his set pieces aren't good, I'm always going to be critical. And I thought he was wasteful on the 2 or 3 opportunities in the first half. We had chances for set pieces. And I think when you're on the pitch and you have a wand of a left foot, as we like to say, because you can't defend with either your left or your right, you better be able to throw the thing in well with your left. There were times where I feel like this is that old argument of, I think we want to see him doing so well. We see 2 or 3 good things and we're like, oh my God. It would be like if Gravenberch had one performance this year and John waxed it poetic, we would all be like, well, that was just one performance. The fact he's done it over 10 starts where he's finished, 8 of them?
Yeah.
Played 90 minutes in all of them. And I think last time he played, there's a difference there. And I guess my thing is it was a good start by Tsimikas. I need to see 5 out of the next 7 if you want me to come on this podcast and say, I think 1, he should be starting, or 2, he is good enough for this level. I still don't believe either of those are facts.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page over there. I mean, he did seem to work better with Gakpo than he does with Diaz. And I don't know if that's on Diaz or Gakpo, or I don't know what it is. But yeah, I mean, that could be because he doesn't know where the hell, because Diaz doesn't know where he's going to be. So God knows Costas is not going to know where he's going to be. But one thing I noticed in the game, more with Costas than Trent, because maybe Trent is getting more used to it, Bickler, but it sometimes feels like the backs forgets who the manager on the side is. There's a moment, I think it's in the 15th game, like Costas is just bombing up the middle. And I'm like, first of all, that's a horrible run because the ball is in the middle. You're not creating.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what you're doing. You're just crowding the area over here. But not only that, I'm like, dude, if you lose the ball, then I think Van Dijk almost killed him when that ball went back over there because he was not where he was supposed to be. But do you think, like Robertson, it feels like, I feel the opposite with Robertson, where there are times where he almost pulls himself back too much. Is it just an adjustment phase that these guys are trying to pick their spots, if you will, for those overlaps and stuff?
Maybe. I think it's just 2 players in Trent and like you said, like you get forward too. I mean, I think at both Costas and Trent, just like the bomb forward, it's a little bit like the ghost of Albert Moreno's pass, like running through the middle of that midfield and then forgetting to come back. I don't know. I think the interesting thing to me, my thing, I thought Costas was okay. I mean, I thought he was good. I didn't think anyway, I think the main thing for me that was interesting is when we subbed Robbo in, I got this little weird vibe, like what does this mean for Gomez, right? When Robinson's the sub in, it kind of leads me to believe that the manager has seen something that he doesn't particularly fancy at fullback in this actual setup. That's my gut feeling. Hopefully I'm wrong, but maybe that was just kind of my takeaway. My other takeaway from this match is I think part of it is not feeling so run into the ground by the actual system. And I think the other part of it is just the actual system itself. But this is a Virgil van Dijk that looks like the Virgil van Dijk from 2018-19 to me. And we talked about, I thought his goose was cooked when we were looking at this player last year as just somebody whose better days were behind him. And he's played so many games for so many years for both club and country. I didn't think that he would get this back, but he's back to gliding. And not only is he back to gliding, he's back to making both the fullback next to him and their center back on the other side better than they are. And so, I just, to me, it's we talked about Gabriel and Saliba for the last few years and how dominant they've been. If Konate can stay healthy with this version of Virgil van Dijk, that is a league-winning center back duo.
Yeah, I mean, I know, we talked about it, after the injury when he first came back. I remember talking about on the pod, is he going to go back to himself and stuff like that? And I think, the biggest thing that shows me that Van Dijk is back to being Van Dijk is how he cuts the ball. Because the biggest thing that I've always liked about Van Dijk and how comfortable, first of all, he makes it look easy. We actually just had a clip go out today when we talk about somebody asked when we were on the Wednesday morning show, the best player we have seen play. And my vote was Van Dijk, just because more like the most dominant person I've seen play, because it has always looked like men playing with boys. And every ball that he used to, when he came back from the injury, he would kind of like kick the ball away a lot more, head the ball away a lot more. Whereas the informed confidence, the Van Dijk that we know, the dominant Van Dijk, brings that ball down to a midfielder, brings it down to Robertson or whoever the left back is and stuff like that. And he's back to that. But at the same time, I mean, Brian says like he has reinvented himself. I think it's partially that, but I think it's more the system where we don't have these like center backs out on an island anymore, where you're like, okay, you cover that half of the field. This guy covers this half of the field.
He doesn't have to rely on top end pace in the system, which is the main thing we were worried about. It's like, he was playing like he had that short burst change of direction he had when he was young, and he clearly didn't have it anymore. I think he's gotten some of that back. I think he's not as bad as he was, but I also think he doesn't need that in the system, and that's the key.
Yeah, that's you take your position well. He doesn't have to sprint as much, Gally.
Right. That was kind of where I was going. I think that I don't think we were wrong when we questioned, one, what will this type of a knee injury do to a player like this that uses pace and speed and quick twitch ability, right? His ability to close down a play. Like, we knew he wasn't going to lose the mental portion of the game, but Temujin, you were a defender. You got older at some point.
I know what you're talking about.
My gut tells me your gut got bigger and you didn't get faster as you got older, right? Like, I'm just guessing here. So what do you learn on, right? You leaned on your experience, space. Like, I always thought he would reinvent, to Brian Shelton's point, he's reinvented himself. I thought he'd reinvent himself into another elite defender, but not like the top level defender. I actually don't think he's reinvented himself. I think he's refound himself. Like, I think he's actually got back to the talent he was with Klopp. But to Paul's point, I think these tactics set everyone up to be more successful doing a team job. Because before, it was all about the team and the chaos that was created going forward. It was about, we left two defenders on an island and just sent everyone attacking. And we were like, hey, you two and that Brazilian dude named Fab, figure it out.
Well, it was all about sacrificing. This is a team that consistently sacrificed shape to win the second ball. And I think, this is a side that's like, let's win the second ball. And if we don't, we'll still have our shape, And
I think it's a monster difference. And to Paul's point, though, where he talks about how it makes the fullback better and the center back better, I do think that that's very, very important that it doesn't get overlooked here. Is that as good as Van Dijk's been, you can argue that Konate's been the best center back over the 10 starts he's had so far. He's been really good, really good. And I think part of that is that he knows Virgil's there. I also think he's more confident in the positioning he's doing. But I think there's a reason that they have a new contract on offer. Kwanzaa got announced today. There is word that we'll hear about a new Konate extension, who is also up next summer. So Kazi can calm down. They have addressed one of the new deals for next summer, Kazi. But I think there's going to be some of this movement, and I wouldn't be surprised if Virgil gets done quickly after that as well. Because I think they're coming to grips with how important Virgil is to that whole defense. And if you're going to give Konate that money, it isn't so he partners Kwanzaa on his opposite bad foot for the next 5-10 years. Like, to me, it feels like you want to build around those three. Now the question is, I think, what will Virgil accept from a fair deal?
I mean, so we said the same about Matip a few years ago. Van Dijk just makes people around him better. I think it gives, especially in case of Konate. I mean, basically, these are the roles, right? You rarely see, and actually, we've seen it a lot more than usual because there's better shape, I think, and better discipline, like you were saying, Bickler, where Van Dijk kind of takes off with the ball sometimes. So that's very rare, but we never saw it. Now we rarely see it. So that's an improvement. And I think that's basically because of the guaranteed shape. He's the one that's supposed to stay back and then Konate pushing up. And I think that's why sometimes, Van Dijk enables the other guy to look a lot better because we see them on the ball a lot more. We see them pushing up a lot more. And we're like, oh, look at all these things he's doing. Well, that's because Van Dijk is back there. He's like, I got this. You push up, but it helps that the shape is still there. The backs are not in the opposite corner flag and stuff like that. So you have some kind of like a stability in the back. We were actually talking about this on the live watch along. I actually like speaking of like Robertson earlier. In the past, anytime we complain about Robertson's defending, it was always him cheating that high line because he didn't trust the speed Bickler. I feel like defensively, this has really helped Robertson as well because he doesn't have to worry about that high line and sprinting anymore, which seemed to be his like biggest weakness over and over again. He would be the one messing up the line.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right there. I still think, when we talk about, I think that Robbo is in a very similar situation to Allison, if I'm perfectly honest. I think this is close to the end for him. I just think there's so much mileage on that tread when you watch that player. Like even when Robbo is full tilt and he's healthy and he's playing like, classic Robertson where he's tearing up and down that left side, his movement just doesn't, I mean, I don't know. It reminds me when like you haven't seen an old buddy in a while. You go back and the family dog is like noticeably older, and you're like, oh God, dude, when did that? Like that's what I feel like when I see Robbo. I'm like, oh man, he's not moving like he used to.
Is that an old dog trying to learn a new trick, you think, or just the body and speed and everything else?
I just think he's got so much wear and tear on him, and like between the fact like. You got to understand, he played like every pot. Like he basically was Mo Salah in minutes for the back line under Klopp. Like he played every minute of everything. And then guess what Scotland did? The same thing, but made him do it as a winger. Like, so it's like, I just think he's got so much mileage. I do think this system helps him. And I think if anything, this system sort of prolongs like it protects him in a way that like, I don't think that he could make it for more than a half season under the same system Klopp played. I don't think we'd see it. Yeah. I don't think we'd make it.
So, but okay, let me ask you this then, Gally, because I do agree. Yeah. I mean, in terms of Robertson, and I do with Brian. Like Brian Shelton says, that's not Robo's game. I think Robo is gone after this season. If you had the choice, and Robo was fine with it, I guess, but would you rather get a left back that perhaps fits the system better, somebody younger, and make Robertson come off the bench? Or would you like basically move on from Robertson, maybe like, enable him to go back to Scotland, whatever he might want to do, and then still have Costas as your backup?
Well, I mean, if you're offering me Costas, that's my alternative.
Well, I'm offering you Costas as your backup. Put the man on
the bench. If you offer me Costas as an alternative, I will take
coming off the bench in Galley's system.
Yeah, I will take the opposite answer if one of them is Costas. But I think there's a world where they go to like an Owen Beck type kid to be the deputy and they sign themselves a left back. Whether it's, there were rumors of Kirkez, the kid from Bournemouth, 20-year-old young player. There's been talk about Antoine Robinson being linked with both Liverpool and City because they like the way that he goes forward for Fulham. And I mean, underlying numbers, his numbers have been superior to most left backs in the Premier League from an attacking standpoint. My thing with Robertson is this. I think Andy Robertson offers you everything, but I also think Andy Robertson has a lot of pride and wants to play. And if a club like Celtic or somebody gives him a chance to prolong his career at championship level or Champions League level football for a chance to win titles. And let's be honest, kid from Scotland probably wants to end his career at Celtic, right? Like winning things.
Well, look, continue if you will. Go back to where it all started.
To me, I think that's fair, and I think that serves everyone well. Because I don't know that Andy Robertson would ever accept being a bench player at Liverpool. Because I think in his mind and in the fabric of himself, at this club, he's more than a bench player. And he seems a very prideful kid. Maybe I'm wrong there and I'm misreading it. He doesn't seem like a Milner guy who would sign a 2 or 3 years to stick around and win some more trophies coming off the bench. He looks like a guy who wants to play, even if it means having to go to Aberdeen instead of Celtic.
I mean, he is like 30 years
I could be
old.
wrong there.
he's gonna be 31 when the next season starts. Looks like I just feel like, I mean, really up to him more than anything else, right? Does he want to be basically at the top level and take on like a Milnerish type role because he can come in for whatever spot at that point, or does he want to go somewhere where he starts? Steve says Joe Gomez should get more time and he could fit into left back easy. And he hasn't, honestly, like before this game, Steve, like we were predicting Gomez to be starting on the left hand side. I mean, Galli and I both have him at the starting 11. That's why when I saw Costas, I was like, what the heck? But let's talk about Gomez real quick before we leave. With the Kwanzaa contract extension, and if we're keeping the band together, where does Joe Gomez fit in this picture? Because he is not getting minutes. I mean, I know Slot is like, hey, you know, it's the time is gonna come where we're gonna rotate more and stuff like that. But I mean, he is literally the fourth right now, which probably is not fair to him. Last time, at least, he was playing everywhere, right back, left back, defensive midfield, goalie, whatever, and to get some minutes. Now he's not even getting that, and I honestly feel bad for the dude.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of like we talked about in the summer, like that it made sense for him to move. We potentially move to West Ham, right? Like maybe Villa. Like we talked about these before. I think Villa makes a ton of sense for him. I don't know if it makes sense for Villa now because they've made some moves.
Yeah.
But I do feel bad for Joe. I still think it makes sense for him to move for both for our club and for him, especially because he was seeing his way into the England national setup for a little bit, right? When he was playing. So I do think it makes sense. I don't think people realize this. Like next year, going into next year, he's going to be turning 28. Like that shocks me. Like when you say Joe Gomez, I think 24. Like seriously, that's what I think when I hear Joe Gomez. Like he's closer to 30 than he is 25. Like it's crazy to me. Like, and I think that we need to keep that in mind with him. Like, we talk about not being fair to him. Like, unfortunately, at this stage in his career, a lot of his opportunity for his prime years already by. Like, I think it, for him and for the club, it makes sense to probably both move on.
How about you, Gally?
Yeah, I mean, I was one who said he would leave for 2 straight years, and I always said I wouldn't begrudge him if he wanted to. I thought that experience going to a major tournament with England and not even literally getting on the bench for a match day squad, basically being an extra, I think had to really weigh at him, knowing that England needed center backs, and if he was playing last year, he probably would have gotten himself a chance, if not one of the last 2 or 3 major tournaments. So Villa is a good shout, but to Paul's point, I almost question whether or not Villa's taken a step forward past him at this point, because they're kind of stepping up. I think he might be looking at Crystal Palace, West Ham, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with living in London, collecting a big paycheck, and having a lot of experience in helping younger players move forward. I just think Joe Gomez has to realize he's got his Champions League medal, he's got his Premier League medal, he's got League Cup medals. He doesn't have that goal. Maybe he'll get one someday. But to me, it feels like the Brentford, Palace, West Ham is probably about his level at this point. I don't know that Joe Gomez can be looking for a guaranteed spot in a championship club, a Champions League club, because I don't believe he would start at Tottenham. I don't believe he would start at Villa. And I'm not really even sure he'd start at Newcastle at this point at center back. And I think that's kind of where Joe Gomez's career has petered.
I don't know. I mean, that's similar to, I put him in the same category when you were talking about Curtis Jones earlier, right? He's the kind of dude that kind of needs to get 3-4 games, and then you get the old Joe Gomez back. I mean, Brian says he has 40 years as a solid defender. The only issue that's 28 seems like I did not realize it was 28 either till Bickler said it. The only issue with, when we talked about Van Dijk earlier, right? We talked about being able to kind of adjust your game and positioning and stuff like that. Well, Gomez's strength has always been speed. And even, when he's out of position, to be able to, similar to Kyle Walker, I don't see Kyle Walker as a great defender The dude is
No.
just fast enough to get back to where he should be when he is not. And I feel like I put Gomez in the same category where, there are guys like that, like they're out of position, but they're fast enough where they can get back. Well, as he ages, and if he loses, like, obviously the word is as you age, you lose speed. So as you lose that speed, I don't think he's going to be a very good defender anymore. And that could be like an issue. But one thing that he has done, I mean, not by design, I guess, but being able to, he's shown that he can pretty much play 3 different positions in your squad. So for the teams you're mentioning, Gally, he's a very valuable piece of depth, quality depth in multiple positions at once for like these smaller clubs that can't afford to have squad depth. Now you have a guy who can give you depth at multiple positions, and that's golden. Go ahead.
He just looks to me like he would be in a perfect setup where he could be like he would have been a perfect outside center back at Sheffield United when they were playing the overlapping where they played the back 3, but it was the center backs who went wide and ran. I feel like he could be great for Brentford for just that reason. He could play in a back 2, he could play in a back 3. He could even play as a wing back if you needed him to. He could play at a fullback and a 4. I just think that, to your point, he looks to me like he's more of a positional piece at a club instead of a cornerstone piece. Where I thought a few years ago, if he got sold, he would go to a club and they'd be like, we're going to make him our linchpin center back at a lower level club. And we're going to build our defense around him and he's going to lead. I don't think he has that in him. I think he's a number 2 banana. And at this point, as he gets older and his skills start to diminish, I almost question whether he's even a number 2. He might be more of like a number 3, like a squad style player. And I just don't think he's going to want that here because I think we're going to continue to buy new players and promote young kids coming up. And I just think he needs to be at a place like Palace where he's fighting with 3 guys at his level instead of literally being the 4th guy in the position he wants to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the biggest deal for him. And I do feel bad for the kid because I like him as a player and like personality and stuff like that. And we'll get into get more minutes. But like Steve was saying earlier, I think, yeah, the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup are kind of like his only options right now to get some minutes. And it's a shame because, to get obviously to the national team and stuff like that. But at the same time, if he gets those minutes and maybe continues to build a profile, it might be a big sale for. I thought it was going to be a relatively big sale. They were talking about like 40, 45 this offseason, right, for him to go. And I know the prices went down a lot, and I think that was perhaps maybe a bit too high for some of the teams. But the English tax that he will have, I think, will kind of get us some good money when we do decide to move on. But it is our favorite time of year. It's the freaking international break again. And I'm not even asking you guys if you're going to watch the international games or not, because I know what's going to happen. So what is the game plan for the next 2 weeks, Bickler?
I'm going up to West Virginia to visit a friend. So I will be doing that and taking my mind off. I'm not watching international football, especially this early in the year with no legitimate cups or anything happening.
How about you, Gally? What are you up to? Taking time off?
Will I watch a little football? I will, because I'll just get bored without it. I don't really care about the USA games or any of that stuff because though I am a little intrigued because it's Pochettino's first camp with the players, and I'd like to see if it looks any different just from how they set up and how they go about their business. So maybe I'll flip through some of that a little bit and watch European games. If they're on in the afternoon, I'll check them out. But we're off next week. I was going to say earlier, I told Paul we were supposed to be flying to Florida on Tuesday. So clearly our vacation has completely been canceled and we are not going. So now we're kind of reshifting next week. So could be a bunch of day trips. My sister has a place up in Wells Beach, said there might be some spot for us up in Maine. So maybe we'll just go up and eat a bunch of seafood and drink our way through Maine a little bit. But we kind of got this whole thing got turned upside down on us in the last 48 hours when this storm went from a lot of rain to a Category 5. But the last thing we want to do is land somewhere, not be able to go in the pool, and have half of the places in the resort closed. And like, it just,
Yeah, I think
it makes, plus, let's be honest, those people and all the resources there should be focused on the people who are stuck there and can't get city to city, not the stupid tourists trying to come in and get like a steak
Drunk?
medium rare. Well, no, I mean, I'm going to get drunk here. It don't matter. I'm drunk now. What the fuck are we talking about? But no, I mean, just, so it kind of got ruined for us. So right now it's like international break will probably be me trying to like, I'm basically going to do vacation like I did when I was a poor 10-year-old kid with, 3 older brothers and sisters, where like we'd have 2 weeks off and my parents would be like, today we're going to go to the Volleyball Hall of Fame. You're like, that is just a room at the Science Museum. And we went to the Science Museum yesterday. They're like, shut up, kid. We're going to the Volleyball Hall of Fame. Enjoy vacation.
Good times. Yeah, that sucks about the vacation, but yeah, you're right.
It happens, man.
I'll watch Turkey because we still do the pod after the Turkish games with my brother and stuff. So I'll see what's going on there. I'll watch the game for like shits and giggles, but I don't get very invested in those. Kind of like a sit back and watch the chaos, kind of an ordeal. But yeah, it's a good time to like to regroup and stuff like that. We got a lot going on with the website. So as always, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. All those likes go a long way. Actually, I mentioned this in the morning because somebody did ask me. So if you're listening to our podcast and they're like, what are these guys constantly talking about sharing and stuff like that? Somebody literally messaged me and said, like, dude, I'm like, what am I supposed to do when you guys share kind of thing? Like, share where? And I was like, dude, even if you just post it on your timeline or send it to a couple of your friends who are like Liverpool fans, heck, Premier League fans, because we have a lot of like general Premier League content as well, and say, hey, go check out these bozos and go subscribe to them and stuff like that. That goes a long, long way. So we appreciate that. Appreciate the support. Enjoy the national break, I guess, as much as you can. But until next Monday, we'll have a lot of content coming over here in American Scouts or either freaking way. And just get ready for the boys. Read all the rumors about the contracts for Trent and stuff like that. Trent and Bellingham, are they feeding each other lunch? Are they like slapping each other? All these kinds, and try to decipher these things. That's going to be it for the next 10 days, unfortunately. But hey, have a great week, everybody. And same time, same place. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.